The Norcadian's jaw dropped in disbelief as his plasma bolts fizzled uselessly against the human's energy shields. These primitive apes should have been blown to bits, not standing defiantly with a smirk. "Gather round, recruits, and listen well," Colonel Jack Thompson growled, his grizzled face illuminated by the campfire. "Back in 2187, we didn't know what in tarnation these Norcadian bastards wanted, but we knew one thing. They aimed to kill us all and take our world." The young soldiers leaned in, eyes wide. They'd heard of the legendary Proxima Centauri B colony, humanity's first foothold among the stars, just 5,000 souls, led by UEF Governor Mark Jenkins against a merciless alien foe. Thompson spat into the flames. That scaly devil Captain Juno thought he'd wipe us out quick with his fancy ship and high-tech weapons. Ha! Fool didn't know humans are made of sterner stuff. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Jenkins rallied us, passed out railguns and power armor. We hunkered down, ready to fight to the last man, woman, and child. It was do or die, no second chances. The recruits held their breath, the fate of their species hanging on this crucial moment in history. Would humanity's first contact with aliens end in blood and defeat, or would the colonists' grit and ingenuity prevail against impossible odds? Thompson's eyes gleamed with pride and anticipation. "Well, now, let me tell you how we sent those Norcadian son-of-a-guns running with their tails between their legs." Thompson's eyes narrowed as he recounted the Norcadians' next move. That snake Juno saw his fancy ship couldn't do squat against our shields, so he ordered his crew of 20 soldiers to land and take us out up close and personal. The recruits gulped, imagining the fearsome sight. Each Norcadian stood 7 feet tall, with razor claws, vicious fangs, and armed to the teeth with plasma rifles and vibroblades. These weren't your average grunts. They were genetically engineered killing machines, faster and stronger than any human could hope to be. But Jenkins wasn't about to roll over, Thompson continued, his voice steely with resolve. He'd fought those Martian separatists back in the day, knew the key was to use the lizard's ego against 'em, lure 'em in close where their speed couldn't save 'em. The grizzled colonel described how Jenkins mustered a militia of 200 brave colonists, each one handed a railgun and combat knife. They hunkered down in the colony's buildings, lying in wait as the Norcadians approached. "Those scaly bastards charged in expecting to stomp us flat," Thompson growled. "But the second they breached the doors, our boys and girls lit 'em up point-blank with hypervelocity rounds that punched clean through their thick hides. Norcadians dropped left and right, never knew what hit 'em." In the chaos, Jenkins led 20 of his best fighters, each clad in strength-enhancing power armor, to confront Juno and his elites head-on. Vibroblades clashed against razor claws as the desperate melee erupted. "It was a goddamn bloodbath," Thompson said, his voice low and intense. Jenkins and Juno, 2 commanders, super soldiers, neither one giving an inch, sparks flying as their blades locked, our guys pouring fire into the Norcadian ranks. The lizard's regeneration was the only thing keeping them standing. The recruits sat utterly still, barely breathing, transported back to that pivotal moment. The grunts and screams of battle filled their ears. The acrid stench of plasma scorched their nostrils. Would Jenkins and his militia prevail, or would humanity's first excursion to the stars end in disaster? Thompson leaned forward, firelight dancing in his eyes. That was when Jenkins pulled a crazy stunt that saved all our asses. Thompson took another swig from his canteen and wiped his brow. "Now I know what you're thinking. Them Norcadians, they were some big, tough sons of bitches, built like brick shithouses with claws that could tear through steel. And yeah, they had us outmatched in raw strength and speed, but what they didn't count on was human ingenuity and determination." The old soldier chuckled, a glint in his eye. "See, while Jenkins and his boys were going toe-to-toe with Juno's elites, our tech boys had a little surprise up their sleeves. They called it the Mjolnir after some old Norse god's hammer. Damn thing packed an EMP that could fry any electronics within 100 clicks." He leaned forward, his voice low and conspiratorial. "Just as Juno was about to call down the thunder on our asses, Jenkins gave the signal. The Mjolnir lit up like the 4th of July, and just like that, the lizard's ship went dark. No weapons, No shields, no nothing. Thompson shook his head, a wry grin on his face. You should have seen the look on Juno's ugly mug when he realized his fancy tech was nothing more than a glorified paperweight. But that bastard, he still had some fight left in him. Ordered his boys to charge us. Figured they could still rip us apart with their bare claws. The recruits leaned forward, hanging on every word. But Jenkins, he wasn't about to let that happen. He and his team, they activated their exosuits, and suddenly it was a whole new ballgame. Our boys were just as strong, just as fast as the Norcadians. And with our railguns and vibroblades, we had the edge in firepower too. Thompson's voice grew somber, his eyes distant. It was a bloodbath, no two ways about it. Jenkins and his crew, they fought like demons possessed. I saw him take on 3 of the lizards at once, his blade flashing faster than the eye could follow. He took down Crone, Juno's right-hand man, with a slash across the throat that nearly took the big bastard's head clean off. The old soldier paused, his gaze hardening. But Juno, he wasn't going down without a fight. He and Jenkins, they locked blades, neither one giving an inch. The rest of us, we did our best to keep the other lizards off Jenkins' back, but it was tough going. They just kept coming, wave after wave, like they didn't care how many of them we cut down. Thompson's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white. Jenkins, though, he wasn't about to let Juno win, not with the fate of the colony, the fate of the whole damn human race riding on this fight. He pulled out all the stops, using every dirty trick in the book to gain the upper hand. The recruits held their breath, waiting for the next twist in the tale. Thompson took a deep breath, his eyes blazing with intensity. And that's when Jenkins did something that even I couldn't believe. The colonel's voice hardened as he recounted the final confrontation. Jenkins and his team fought their way to the bridge, where that bastard Juno was waiting. The Norcadian was a skilled fighter, fast and strong, but Jenkins had years of experience, and that powered exosuit evening the odds. Thompson's eyes seemed to flash with the memory of clashing blades. Their vibro swords lit up the bridge with sparks as they dueled. Jenkins parried and struck, his reflexes boosted to superhuman levels. But Juno was wily, taunting Jenkins even as they fought. The old soldier grimaced. That's when the smug lizard revealed their real plan. Proxima Centauri B was just the first domino. The Norcadians had eyes on our other colonies, preparing simultaneous strikes to wipe us out across the stars. The recruits gasped, the enormity of the threat sinking in. Thompson nodded gravely. Jenkins knew he had to end it fast and get word to the UEF, so he pulled a feint, made as if to slash Juno's head, then dropped and swept the Norcadian's legs. As that scaly devil fell, Jenkins rammed his vibroblade straight through Juno's black heart, ended the fight for good. With Juno dead and the ship secure, Jenkins' crew started tearing through the computers, looking for intel on the planned invasion. Thompson's voice dropped low, and what they found sent chills down their spines. The lizards had been watching us for decades, studying our tech and tactics. They were ready for an all-out assault on every UEF colony. The colonel fell silent, his weathered face grim in the dancing firelight. The recruits exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of this revelation heavy on their shoulders. Humanity had won its first battle against the merciless Norcadian foe, but the war, it seemed, was just beginning. Thompson took a long pull from his canteen, then fixed the recruits with a steely gaze. Jenkins transmitted the intel back to UEF command, but he knew the lizards wouldn't wait long. If humanity was going to survive, we needed to shore up our defenses and strike back hard. And that meant calling in the big guns from Earth, but that's a whole other story. The old colonel's voice dropped to a whisper as he continued the tale, his eyes haunted by the memories. Jenkins and his boys, they hightailed it back to Earth fast as they could. The Norcadian plans they'd found. They painted a grim picture, whole fleets of them lizard ships ready to strike our colonies. It'd be a slaughter if we didn't warn the brass in time. Thompson shook his head, disgust etched on his weathered face. But when they got to Geneva, to UEF headquarters, that's when the real gut punch came. Turned out, we'd had snakes in our own nest the whole damn time. Norcadian spies and turncoats wormed their way into the government, and leading the pack was Admiral Marcus Blackwell himself. The recruits gasped at the revelation, the betrayal hitting hard. Thompson spat on the ground, his voice thick with contempt. Blackwell, that traitorous bastard. He'd been in bed with the Norcadians for years, selling us out, sabotaging our defenses, feeding them intel. And now, with the invasion on our doorstep, he made his move. The old soldier's fists clenched, knuckles white. Jenkins tried to warn the UEF, but Blackwell was ready. Had Jenkins and his team clapped in irons, branded as traitors, their warnings about the invasion dismissed as lies and Norcadian propaganda. And all the while Blackwell and his cronies were seizing control of our military, ordering our boys to stand down and roll over for the lizards. Thompson paused, the weight of the memories bearing down on him. But Jenkins, he wasn't about to go quiet into the night. Him and a handful of loyal UEF boys, they busted out of the brig and launched a desperate assault on the Norcadian flagship in orbit. A last-ditch effort to cut the head off the snake, by Earth sometime. The colonel's voice grew raw with emotion as he recounted the fateful battle. They fought like demons, Jenkins and his boys, carved their way through the lizards to the bridge, but it cost them. Most of the team cut down before they could reach Blackwell. In the end, it was just Jenkins left, standing face to face with that traitorous snake. Thompson's eyes blazed with the memory of Jenkins's final stand. He called Blackwell out, exposed him for the traitor he was. Then they clashed, vibroblades humming, sparks flying. Jenkins was a hell of a fighter, but Blackwell was no slouch either. Tough bastard, and he fought dirty. But in the end, Jenkins put him down, ran him through, and left him bleeding on the deck. The old soldier sagged, the fire in his eyes dimming. But it was too little, too late. The Norcadians, they'd already landed on Earth. Thousands of them pouring out of their ships, guns blazing. Our boys, the ones still loyal, they fought like hell. But it was a losing battle. The lizards had a beachhead, and more were coming by the minute. Thompson's voice grew heavy with sorrow. Jenkins and what was left of his team, they had no choice. They scattered, went to ground. The Norcadians, they took the planet, crushed what was left of the UEF. Earth, it belonged to them now. And the rest of us, we were left to pick up the pieces, to find a way to survive in a world ruled by the lizards. The colonel fell silent, his tale at an end. He looked out at the stunned faces of the recruits, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The betrayal, the fall of Earth. It was almost too much to process. But Thompson wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his gaze hard as flint. That's why you're here, why we're all here. The Norcadians may have won the battle for Earth, but the war ain't over. Not while there's still a human left drawing breath. We'll fight them in the streets, in the hills, in the goddamn sewers if we have to. We'll bleed them, make them pay for every inch of our world they try to take. The old soldier stood, his back straight, his eyes blazing with defiance. This is our home, our birthright, and one day we'll take it back. Drive the lizards off Earth and into the void. It won't be easy. It'll take blood, sweat, and tears. But by God, we'll do it, for Jenkins, for every human they've ground under their heel, for Earth. The recruits rose to their feet, their faces set with determination. They knew the road ahead would be long and hard, a battle against impossible odds, but they were ready. Ready to fight, to bleed, to die if need be, for humanity, for Earth. Thompson nodded, seeing the fire in their eyes. All right then, enough talk. Time to get to work. The Norcadians ain't going to kick themselves off our world. That's on us. And we'll make damn sure they rue the day they ever set foot on our soil. The colonel turned and strode from the room, his boots ringing on the concrete. The recruits fell in behind him, their hearts steeled for the trials to come. The battle for Earth had been lost. But the war had only just begun. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.